Jackpot. In this video tutorial, we are going to see how we can develop the API using entity framework database first approach. So we have opened here SQL Server, and in this SQL Server, we are going to create a table named as employee, and the database which we are using is DemoDB. So using this script, we are going to create the employee table. So here we have ID, name, mobile, and address. Simple 4 fields. So let's execute it. So it's completed. Now let's go to the tables. So here I have the employee table. So I'll just simply edit a couple of records. Employee 1, mobile number 111. Then I have employee 2, mobile number 222. Then I have employee 3, mobile number 333. Okay, so I have 3 records in the DB in the table. So I have 3 records over here. Now to create the API, we'll simply open Visual Studio and create a new project. And here we'll select Blazor web app. Click on next. We can also select a blank solution and simply add the remaining solution in that. So we'll select blank solution, click on next, and we'll name it as employee project create. So this will create an employee blank solution for the employee project. Inside this, we'll add a new project, and this time we'll select Blazor web app, employee.web app. Click on next, and we'll select .NET 8 create. And apart from this, we'll add one more project for our API. So we'll click on add a new project. This time we'll select ASP.NET Core Web API. Click on next, and we'll name it as employee.api. Click on next, create. So now we have 2 projects, employee API, employee web app. So we'll first use the employee API project. So we already have a controller over here, weather forecast controller. We'll delete that, and we'll also delete this weather forecast CS. Now we'll add a new controller, add new controller. We'll select API, empty controller, add, and we'll name it as employee controller.cs. So we have an empty controller over here now, employee controller. Now to make use of entity framework database first approach, we already have the database in place with the table. Now we'll add few NuGet packages. You can search entity framework. The first one is entity framework core. We need we'll install it. Second one is entity framework core SQL server. And the third one is entity framework core tools. So once these packages are installed, we can check them in this NuGet packages here. So we have all the 3 packages: entity framework core, SQL server, and tools. Now the next part is we are going to set this API as the startup project. We'll close all the tabs. Now we'll execute a command in the package manager console. So here we will execute one scaffold command on the API project. So since API, we have set the API employee.api as the startup project, we can select the default project as API, and we need to run one command over here to connect to our to generate the default scaffold template. So the command is scaffold dbContext. The first is server, the SQL server. So in our case, if we see here, when we connect it, we can see that the SQL server, the server name is this one. So this server we are using as the server. Then we have the database, the name of the database, trusted connection as true, trusted certificate as true, and Microsoft Entity Framework Core, this NuGet package library we are using, and the output directory we are using as database. So it will create a database folder in our API project. So let's run it. So once the build is successful, we'll see a database folder over here in this one. Okay, so we are getting only the variant culture is supported. So in case if you are getting this type of error, so what we need to do is simply go on this employee API and edit project file, and here you will find this invariant globalization. So we need to make it false, save it, close it, and rerun this command. So once this command is successfully executed, we will see a database folder in this employee.api along with the dbContext. Sometime it takes a little while. Okay, so here we have it. So here we have the database folder, and in this we have the employee table, which is represented employee class, which represents the database table, and apart from that we have the demo dbContext. Okay, so based on the database first approach we are using. So based on the database, it has generated the dbContext and the employee class. So now let's go in the employee controller and create the constructor and the object of the dbContext. So here we have created an object of demo dbContext, and also we have created the constructor. Now apart from this, what we'll do is we'll create a HTTP GET method to get the employees from the table. So here simply it's a very simple piece of code. We are using this HTTP GET, and we have named the route as get employees. So when we try to call it, we will have employee/get employees, and simply using this get employees, what we are doing is we have created this object of context. So in the context we have these employees, and we are getting the list of that employees, and we are returning it back as a task of action result. So here we have it. So this get employees is completed in this employee controller. Now we have to apply a few settings. By using that, we can simply get the list of employees from the database. So we'll have to go in this program.cs and here apply a few settings. The first setting that we are going to apply is, so here below this add services to the container, we are going to add a service. So builder.services.add dbContext. So we have this demo dbContext. So what we are doing is we are injecting this demo dbContext, and using this use SQL server, we are pulling the connection string from the configuration. So to add the connection string in the configuration, what we'll have to do is we simply have to go in this app settings, and here above this logging, we'll have to add the connection string so that our API can directly connect with the database. So here we have simply added this key connection string, and it has the key as DB connection. Inside this we have simple things like the server, the database, the same thing which we have used in our scaffold command. So here we have trusted connection, and the connection timeout which we have added is 30. So what this will do is like we can initialize this in our code, the connection string, and the same connection string will be used in our program.cs when we try to inject in the builder services. Now apart from this, we will have to add some policy for CORS to enable CORS in our API. So let's add that. So here in this program.cs, here we have added this CORS. So we have defined a CORS policy as underscore my CORS, and that same CORS policy we have added in the services in the builder, web application builder. So here we have added in the options of this add policy, we have mentioned this with origin as star. That means we can allow the request from any origin with any header and any method. So we have not added any restriction on the API. So the same CORS policy we are going to add here. So here we have added the same CORS policy inside the application use CORS, my CORS policy, the same policy which we have defined over here. So now let's try to run the API. We'll put a breakpoint in the controller. Okay, so we have this API and we have the Swagger enabled by default. So here we have put the breakpoint on the get employee. Let's try to execute it, try it out, execute. Okay, so here we see the data. If we see the data, we have got 3 as the count because we have 3 records in the database, 1, 2 and 3. When you click on continue, we can get the same as a JSON output here in the Swagger. Okay, so our API part is ready. Now let's try to create a UI to call the API. So here in this we have added this employee.webapp. In the components, we'll go on the home page and we'll simply add a code. Inside the code, we'll create a method to call the API. Before that, we'll have to inject the HTTP client. So let's do that. So here, to call the API, we have injected this HTTP client and we have created an object of it. Now, simply get the data and bind it on this Razor page. We have to create one model. So inside the components folder, we'll add a models folder. We can keep this models folder outside the components folder. So at the project level, we'll add a models folder, and inside this model, what we'll do is we'll simply create a employee model of the same structure as we have this in the database. So here in this models, we'll add a new item, and here we'll select a class. We'll name it as employee model.cs, and inside this we'll simply put all the 4 to 5 fields what we have in the database. So we have an employee model with the same ID, name, mobile number and address. Now on the home page, we'll create an object of this. So in our get request, what we'll be getting is like a list of employees. So we'll declare a list of employee model. and to use it we simply have to so here we have employee model public class. This namespace we have to use. So when we add this using, the error will disappear because this employee model refers to this location. Now we'll simply have to write a method to get the employees. So here we have this onInitialized async method. So in that we are simply calling get employees, and here we have a get employees, and inside the get employees we are using this client HTTP client, and through that we are making a async call to the API. So employee slash get employees. So this is the employee controller. This is the controller action method. And what we are getting is in return is we are getting an employee model. So the employee which we are getting is from this one, and it represents the exact uh, class structure. So that same data is getting transferred to this employee model. So here if we go in the employee web app home component, we'll get everything stored in this employee. Now what we have to do is we simply have to uh, loop through this employee list and bind in a tabular structure. So let's add the table. So here we have a table with a header and a body. Inside the header we have number, name, mobile and address, and in the T body we have used for each loop. So this for each loop will loop through on the employees list, and it will display the index as the number, and then we have name, mobile number and address. Now this home component will show all the employees by calling the API. Few settings we'll have to do in the program.cs file of the web app project. So the setting will be required to call, we'll have to mention the API URL. So let's do that. So here in this program.cs file of employee.webapp, just above this app.builder.build, we'll have to add the code to access the API. So here in the builder services, we have added a scoped object with the base address as the API, whatever port number we'll have of the API slash API. So if we go and see the home component, here we only have mentioned the controller action method and the controller name. We don't have the base URL. So the base URL is mentioned here in the program.cs file. Now to just run it, we'll have to simply set both the projects as the startup project. So we'll have to right click on the solution and then go in multiple startup project and set both as the start. Apply. Okay. Now what will happen is this will launch both the projects. So let's run it. We'll have to see what is the API URL in this case. So accordingly we'll update here. So we have this 7123. This is the port number. So this same port number we'll have to add here, and let's run it again. So we have the API, and also so the API has already been called here. Now this time we have not called it from the Swagger. This has called from the home component. So if we go on the home component, and we can see the 3 employees. So let's add one more over here. Okay, so let's try to refresh it. Let's remove the breakpoint. Okay, so we have 4 employees over here. So this way what we have done is like first we have created the database, and then using the database first approach, we have created the API, and then using the entity framework core and the API interaction with the front end, we have called the API and binded the data on the Razor component. So that was it in this video. See you in the next video. Hope you like the video. Thanks for watching.